Good afternoon. I will call this meeting to order on May 16th, meeting of the Climate Action Planning Committee. Welcome, everybody. So let's begin with our second item on the agenda, which is discussion and approval vote of the April 24th meeting minutes. Did anybody have any? Great. Feedback or corrections on those? All right, hearing none, does anyone have a motion to approve?
I thought Ron moved that. If you did, I'll second.
Okay. All right, and roll call vote since we have hybrid meeting here, so Ron? I approve. Lisa?
I approve.
Yes.
Okay, and Maggie?
Yes.
Alex votes yes. Great. Is anybody taking notes today?
I was gonna ask.
Can you do that?
I'll do my best.
That would be lovely.
I've avoided taking minutes up until now.
There are all these apps for recording your meeting.
There are, I mean, Zoom will even do it, but the town council wasn't comfortable with us turning on that setting,
Okay.
which is unfortunate because it really does work. I use it on my personal Zoom account and you know, it requires some corrections, but oh, wonderful.
Oh, here we go.
John. All right, so we're just moving on to item 3 on the agenda, which is a discussion of the Community Preservation Committee solicitation for fiscal year 25 funding proposals. How about you take us?
Thanks, Alex. I suggested that we have this on the agenda, even though funding is proposal scheduling is very, very tight for FY25. More in the thought of having this on our table for FY26. FY25 proposals for funding are due on the 31st of this month. But just as background, we'll have in the town annually, usually more than $1 million in Community Preservation Act funding for activities that fall under 3 areas: community housing, historic preservation, open space, and recreation. And in all likelihood, one of those areas, namely open space, would be probably for this committee something that might foresee project eligibility in the future. And I just thought this would be a good thing to keep on our radar and visit periodically to see if there are any things as we evolve in our work that we might tag as possible projects for funding applications for FY26.
You have any like ideas for kinds of projects that might?
So the Conservation Land Subcommittee is meeting on June 12th. And there's a proposal for everybody to review to make a basic assessment of the climate implications of the Milton conservation plans. And we haven't gotten just a draft proposal, so, but it's an idea that possibly could fit into the open spaces category.
Would that be sort of like an estimate of the carbon sequestration potential?
That's right.
You know, flood mitigation. I mean, I'm sure it would be great to have, you know, references to all the environmental services that Milton enjoys from the Blue Hills. Quantify it.
Yeah.
And any one of these might be something that we could possibly any one of these projects that might surface might be something that we could possibly consider in collaboration with another town unit or organization or agency. For example, what Ron is speaking about in terms of conservation lands in Milton would have some with many with DCR, others with the Milton Conservation Commission. And there may be possibilities of doing something shoulder to shoulder, putting in a joint application, for example, where it may be appropriate. I don't know whether it would be, but they could possibly stand alone or be done collaboratively.
So how much detail is needed going into a funding application like that? Like, would you have to identify a contractor and scope of work? And
Not on the initial, for the initial application, it's basically stating the problem or opportunity, and then a brief paragraph, maybe 100 words or so, no more than 200. That would help the committee understand what it is that you're proposing, and they will make a determination then as to whether it will go to the next step. And if it does, then they'll ask for a much more elaborate plan. And that would include financial, actually, the first one, they would include a rough financial estimate. The second one, a much more refined financial estimate, but not a contract. We have one underway at the present time, just to pull out one of three from the Conservation Commission that were approved this year at town meeting. And that's the estuary study in the Ponset River, the 33 acres that the town now has given to the Conservation Commission for control and responsibility. That work is now being reviewed with a potential contractor. Just at this particular point in time, it wouldn't become operational until FY25 or July 1, with the contract signed after that if it was approved by the town.
okay, that's really interesting. I was going to ask you, since you've been, at least as far as town meeting and approval by the CPC for a specific project, I didn't realize that you're still before having selected contractors. So how do you define the scope of work without the partnership of contractors' expertise in the work?
They have discussions with potential contractors beforehand, but the signing of an actual contract, the finalization of the contract wouldn't take place until much later. So there'd be 3 steps essentially that you've identified. One is the preliminary application. Second one is the final application to the CPC. Then once the Community Preservation Committee has all of its planned activities ready to propose to town meeting, goes into the warrant, and then it's submitted to the article submitted to town meeting for approval. And if approved, then you can begin the final detailed process.
So that means you now have a specific budget that you can go out and do an RFP.
That's exactly correct.
So I say RFP, like I know what I'm talking about. Is there a process for that as well? Okay.
We, in this case, worked with the director of the Department of Public Works. And he made contact with a potential provider of the service. In this case, it's surveying these wetlands, which haven't been surveyed since 1965.
Yeah.
And there are no visible markings. We can't even determine where the boundary is between Milton and Quincy in that area.
And who's the committee that reviews these initially?
It's the Community Preservation Committee,
Oh, who's on that?
made up of about 10 individuals. The present chair is a gentleman by the name of Tom Callahan. And then, like this committee, there are representatives from various other committees in town. Wendy Gappo, for example, is the representative from the Conservation Commission. So the CPC, there's somebody from the housing who representing them on the CPC, somebody from the Historic Commission. Because historic preservation is one of their objectives.
Could those grants be used for, adaptation? I'm thinking like, dealing with, flooding and, runoff, like rain gardens for the bigger buildings in town. Something that's not like super expensive because we're basically talking landscaping, but it would help like increase, our ability to absorb stormwater.
But you're proposing a study, right? And the study will have a number of goals that will be important areas of needed data that will be usable in terms of looking at conservation land and how it can best be managed. And I think that is going to cost something, but it shouldn't be an enormous amount for the quality of the information that should come out of the study, especially if you define your goals very, very, very precisely. And I think there are some pretty obvious ones that could be identified, and that would go on to be a very good proposal.
And we had to do that with this particular project that was approved, for example, talking about flooding mitigation, pollution mitigation. I can't answer definitively question about adaptation, but you could propose it and we could first review it and decide whether or not within the guidelines of the CPC, that's something you wanted to propose.
Right.
And there's nothing to suggest that this committee couldn't do multiple proposals, just like the Conservation Commission put forward 3 of them for this round of funding approvals.
And it looks like the Canadian wildfires are coming back, so that this is sort of an obvious link to what you need to do and what you need to determine in order to come up with the data that you need. And so I think it's very reasonable.
Maggie, do you ever?
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yeah, so I kind of was wondering if the Climate Action Committee could put a general request in. I'm a firm believer that preservation is the best mitigation. And I think that the town needs to do more to actually move its efforts forward to purchase land. So I know that the Climate Action Committee can't own land, but could we put forth a general proposal to try and purchase land that comes up for sale and then put it in, keep it in open space?
It would seem to me that would be potentially an outcome of the study that says that the town needs to purchase certain identified parcels, whereas rather than the sort of the first step of a proposal.
Because I know, like, people think that we have a lot of green space in town, but we really don't. It seems like every week more green space is being lost and destroyed. And like, I think we're comforted in knowing that we have the Blue Hills, but the Blue Hills does not belong to the town of Milton. The town of Milton has zero control over the Blue Hills. So I would like to focus some efforts on what we can control, and that's on property in town. And I think it's unfortunate that, the town is selling off land and not keeping it protected. the temperatures are rising, we need more trees, we need more green spaces. With COVID, it was demonstrated that we all need our private, places to walk and play in. So I think we, as a town, need to be purchasing more land rather than, selling it. So I don't know how to go about doing this. But I just think we need to have some money, just like we have to try and move the ball forward with affordable housing. We need to move the ball forward with open space and keeping it open and natural. And not, not building on it, just keeping it green space. And you could do, walking trails or whatever, or just trees. You just need every corner in town should be green and not built upon. So I don't know if we're able to do that or not.
Maybe there's a way to weave together what Maggie, John, and Ron are saying. Ron has a meeting that's coming up in June 12th. Out of that meeting would come some perspective, ideas, goals, proposals, whatever. They would tie in, of course, to open space, needless to say. And we do have also an open space committee in town. So we want to consult with them and possibly also with the Concom, which would give us an opportunity to really plan thoughtfully for a solid fiscal year 26 proposal.
So I just ask a clarifying question? So do I have a typo on the agenda when I talk about fiscal year 25 funding? Is that what was just?
Fiscal year 25 is initial proposals are due the 31st of this month. So I don't know.
What was approved at town meeting last week? Is that fiscal year 24?
Yes.
So fiscal year 24 goes from June 2024 to June 2025.
No, fiscal year 24 is July 23 to June 24, and then fiscal
Sorry.
year 25.
So fiscal year 25 would be June 25 to June 26.
Right, so it should really be fiscal year 26.
No, sorry, so fiscal year 25 is this upcoming July 2024 through the next June.
Okay, so it should have been 26 on here.
Right.
And the due date for an initial proposal
May 31st.
is before this meeting.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand. So, but all that would be required is 100 words or so of general high level stuff.
You can submit as many as you want, but the initial proposal doesn't have to be an elaborate document,
It does sound like
but it has to
Ron wants to
have
keep that
substance to it.
open. You have
Yeah,
to
I
put
mean-
something in, before he has an opportunity to meet with this group and flush it.
I could write something, but I don't, if it would be considered tentative and preliminary. But it's up to you guys. 100 words?
But I just.
Yeah, I could send Ron examples of what we use, and we could make a determination as to whether or not you want to propose something for the end of this month.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we want to throw up barriers to, creating options for funding.
Yeah, it's like I'm willing.
Do we need to vote that we give him authority to write a proposal?
I don't know, do we? I don't know why we need to go on that.
I mean, everybody passing out. Everything. Yeah. I should say though, just for Maddie, that this, and what we're looking at for the conservation lands proposal is something that would require, as someone said, collaboration from possibly other communities and definitely from the DCR, who have said if you're going to come to the meeting. So.
Because it's, what I think of, is you look back and you see that we have been very fortunate as a town that we've had residents who've worked with the town and allowing the town to kind of do a private-public partnership. And so if we had a fund with some money in it, perhaps we could approach a property owner in town and say, hey, look, we've got X amount of dollars in this fund, and it probably would have to accumulate every year. And maybe it's, you know, through CPA funding, if we're able to get a little bit of money through that. Then we could go when we see a property is coming up for sale, or we hear about a property coming up for sale, like that Central Ave, those 2 lots, you know, they each sold for 900,000. And if you've driven by it, it's devastating to see every last tree was removed, and then they were blasting the rocks, the ledge down there, getting the second lot ready. You know, and they were on the market for $900,000 a piece. And if we had some money, maybe we could buy it or work with the property owner somehow and, you know, and preserve it, you know, and I don't know, you know, it's a dismal forecast with the town budget. You know, we're not going to have any money in free cash, or, you know, we're looking at an override probably in the fall for an operational override. So I don't think we can depend on any funds from like the town side, but maybe the CPA, we could start a fund somehow. And even though we might not have a specific project, maybe they'd be willing to help fund a fund so we could purchase some land and not.
And there is certainly a history there of, you know, generous private donations to the town, like the Cunningham Park and Land Estate. Right.
This might be getting us a little off track, but I'll just quickly throw it out there that, you know, I've had experience in communities where there were land trusts that could work with, you know, folks who had, you know, a significant amount of land that they would basically, you know, give away their development rights, you know, that would be in forever. And that land would be preserved, but it would still, you know, the owners would still own it, but their taxes would go way down because they would, no, you know, it'd be a less valuable piece of property because it couldn't ever be developed or subdivided. So that might be something to look into for some of like the larger parcels in town.
And I think the study you're thinking about would provide some intelligence on where from a you know, an ecological preservation perspective, which parcels are most interesting, and where is there an intersection between those and the kind of
like sites with
rural financing opportunities?
Just to give you a little bit of background, Milton had a Milton Conservation Land Trust for a number of years, and they did exactly what you're talking about. Most of the land was, if not, let's just say the vast majority of it was given as donations to the land trust. The land trust in Milton decided, through its 3 trustees, to convey the ownership of most of its holdings to the Wildlife Trust, which is based in Plymouth and oversees lands for conservation purposes in multiple communities throughout eastern Massachusetts, most of them in Plymouth County, in the Taunton River watershed area and some of the line, but they go beyond that, of course, being here in Milton. That conservation trust in Milton now no longer exists.
What happened to
It decided to convey its land holdings to the Wildlands Trust. It had some money left over that it gave to the Conservation Commission, several $1,000s, and the smallest parcels that it had remaining, it conveyed to the Milton Conservation Commission. What you're talking about too, my wife and I own land in another community in Milton and in Massachusetts, and we conveyed that to the land trust in that town, totally, so that we didn't keep it at all. We gave it to that trust, and they own large tracts of land. Conservation Commission in that town owns large tracts of land. So very creative things, but I'll get everything to you on. Once the initial proposal goes to the CPC, they meet in committee and review. They may come back with questions, they may want more information, they may turn it down, they may say come back another year. They may say, okay, you're proposing $100,000. Can you do this for $50,000? There are all types of possibilities.
Sounds good.
But you can't win if you don't play.
Exactly. All right, any more comments on this topic before we move on to the next item? Okay, so the next item is a discussion of potential application to the Department of Energy's Clean Energy Grant Program. Do you have any update to share?
Well, so there was it wasn't money, but it was the technical, getting an expert.
Mhm.
So I did submit that on behalf of the committee, and, you know, I don't know quite when I'll hear back, but basically I asked for support with our outreach plan. That we have recommendations and, we need help with, I know we have a plan, but, so we're gonna get the feedback and then what do we do with it? Like how do we keep track of it and consider it in a thoughtful way? So like I thought, again, asking for technical expertise around that. If there are other pieces, again, you can submit applications, they ask, I don't know, there were a few questions that involved, like what's the main question you would want answered and what does success look like if you got this. There are some parts I wasn't so sure about, like I don't think we have environmental justice communities in the town.
Yes, there is. There's
Okay.
one primarily, I think, Winter Valley, and then
Okay.
in northwest,
Yeah,
Milton.
I said there was a chance to say I'm not sure. So that's what I said.
No, there is.
And we have,
And I think there might have been another designation that I wasn't able to find. So, but in any case, I did submit that. But if you guys can think of another, it's dealing with energy. So like with the stretch code, do we need an expert to help? I know it passed town meeting, but now what? Like, do we need an
The
expert
state
to
actually
help?
provides training, free training to
Okay.
the building commissioner. So
Yeah.
I don't believe there's any funding requirements
Yeah.
that would roll out there, or I would
Yeah.
have shared that with town meeting. And Maggie, did you want to say something?
I think we have at least two environmental justice neighborhoods. One is down off of the Parkway on the over by Lamb's Woods, where they're thinking of putting the new school and the artificial turf.
Lower Guy Road.
Yeah, I think that whole neighborhood is considered an environmental justice area as well as Winter Valley. And I do think that there is a map on like Massachusetts.com or something, or .gov, that has an environmental justice map. So I haven't visited in some.
I have one as well. I'm trying to find it.
And
I have seen it. Yeah.
it may not have been exactly that they were asking me for. I think it was also like low income, below a certain level thing. So, but I can, get that information and, email it to the contact for it. One of the questions they asked was about, like, is your community associated with the Clean Cities Coalition program? And there is one for Massachusetts Clean Cities Coalition programs and projects. And there are grants and things available there. Like there's DOER grants for electric school bus pilot. I don't know how it works if you contract out your bus service like the town of Milton does, but I don't know that maybe like the expertise we need is someone to do like collate all this information and see like that's a good fit to apply for funding for some of our programs.
Well, I like the application you described having already submitted, because it's like you support with the plan development.
Yeah,
And then once we have a plan, there'll be action items in it where we could say,
yeah,
we need help doing that.
right,
Funding that over there, but
Yeah.
before we have the plan, it's a little tough to
right,
lay those out.
yeah. So that is the update.
And I know, I know we, contract out for our school buses, but I know the high school has, their own vans. My son was on the ski team and they always took a van to go to their ski meets, because they didn't need a big bus. So I wonder if they would be able to help, get these electric vans, as opposed to just a diesel or gas van too.
Yeah,
I did find the EJ map.
great, thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that update. Are there any other comments or questions on this topic? Great. So let's move on to discussion of progress and next steps toward the technical working group planning sessions. I wanted to use this time just to hear how people are getting along, scheduling those sessions and recruiting people to participate in them. And then I know I had promised to sort of provide some examples of like structural recommendations for the document. I had hoped to draft a chapter or a section of the buildings chapter as an example, and with all the lead up to town meeting, I just didn't get that far, but I do have some high level thoughts to share in the slides. You can put those up, Jack.
Oh, sorry. Are you taking notes as well?
What?
Are you taking notes? I started typing.
I took some notes, but now
Okay.
I'm talking, I'm not taking notes.
Sorry, I had it up.
Mr. Chairman, you mentioned town meeting. Did you want to inform the
I have that on.
later on the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of agenda items, but they're not all long this week. See how we do. It was an exciting and novel experience for me.
And you did very well.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Can we just move the pictures there so we can see them up there?
Oh. Sorry.
Maybe turn on the slideshow. You have two mouse on the screen?
Yeah, there's two computers.
All right. So, you know, nothing set in stone here. I just wanted to make some recommendations and get your feedback. So first slide here. This is a kind of organizational approach that I've seen in a lot of different climate action plans that I think helps clarify scope by dividing it into kind of a hierarchy of goals, strategies, and actions. So the next slide to kind of define what I mean. Here's sound. Okay. So by goals, I mean broad quantifiable outcomes that are necessary to meet emissions targets and resilience goals. And I think it's important that we root the scope of the plan in something quantitative like the pathway study that Apex delivered to us, or Massachusetts decarbonization roadmap, or the 2030 or 2050 clean energy and climate plans. Because without that grounding in our town level or state level greenhouse gas emissions inventory, it's hard to say whether you've got enough things in the plan to actually make a dent in our overarching objective, which is hitting the state's emissions reduction goals in 2030, 2040, and 2050. So the next slide. No offense to our friends at Apex, but I actually spent some time digging into the pathways document that they sent us, and I think their goal definitions are not great examples of what I'd like to see us have. And so these are their buildings goals are to reduce residential energy consumption, reduce commercial energy consumption. And what's wrong with these, I think, is that they're not quantified, right? So actually their pathways analysis is based on some well-defined quantitative goals, but they didn't write those in the goals. So I think that makes things confusing. Also, this description is conflating energy efficiency and the renewable energy transition. So I don't think it's the goal of this plan to bring our energy consumption to zero. So like we want energy consumption and a pleasant modern lifestyle are in many ways synonymous.
Yeah.
Like I think we're trying to preserve that. So we're trying to shift to sustainable sources of energy, which requires energy efficiency investments, because we can't have everything be coming from electricity and use it wastefully, but we're not trying to reduce it to zero. So on the next slide, I tried to convert those into better examples. And these, I did my best to draw these out from the Apex roadmap study. So I think these are some of the assumptions that they used to get their emissions trajectory in that document. One was that by 2030, 100% of Milton's residential buildings have switched to 100% green electricity from the utility, right? This, like if everybody switched tomorrow to the 100% green tier of the Milton CEA program, or in the contract renewal in 2027 and 2030, it was ramped up to the point where everybody's electricity was effectively 100% green. So that's one goal, right? And along with that, sort of 15% of existing housing stock and commercial building stock being fully electrified by 2030. So you don't have to be all the way there by 2030, but, you know, to hit that interim goal, that the state has defined, you need about 15%.
So don't you need, maybe it exists. Don't you need a baseline to show the percentages? You need to know where you're starting from.
Yes.
Does that data, and somewhere in these sources?
Yeah, so that is, so I dug into the Apex pathway study, a little bit to try to prepare these slides, and they definitely do start from the baseline,
Oh, they
the 2017,
Uh-huh.
the 2017 inventory. So remember, they gave us a 2017 inventory and a 2022 inventory.
Hmm.
And then this study used the 2017 as the base year. Our target is the state target is a 50% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from 1990 levels
Hmm.
by 2030.
Hmm.
And I think in the Apex Pathways document, somewhere it says that's a 31% reduction from 2017 levels or something like that.
Mhm.
This is a topic that will bleed into the progress report topic. We need to have the resources in our progress report, and I think one resource really lacking is, it's great that they gave us this document, but like now that I'm reading it, I have questions and I can't ask anybody the questions, so.
No, just so you probably know this, but the state target is consistent with the global target.
Right,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and
there's,
this is as well.
and kind of what we ideally need is, you know, there's the state target, and we could base our goals on those, lacking other information. You know, the proportions of emissions from different sources are different in Milton, so it would be better
I see.
if we could adjust those to Milton's situation,
Okay,
which I think is what the Apex Pathways analysis was supposed to provide.
I see.
I don't completely understand or trust it yet. And I have nobody to ask the questions to, but, so I mean, I think part of what we need to do is, I'm not saying these are the right goals, but
Yeah,
this is what, sort of quantitative time-bound measurable goals might look like. And they should be based on a trustworthy study like the pathways analysis. Next slide. So then below your goals, you have strategies, and these are general approaches to make progress towards your goals. And these should be specific, but they don't need to be quantifiable, right? I think not every type of activity that we'll want to take on to drive these things forward will have a predictable or measurable impact. But good strategies will help answer the question, like, what kind of things will we do and what kind of things will we not do? So they should be clarifying. Next slide. So some examples, it could be progressively increase the green energy content of Milton CA's default tier. You know, we tried to do that, didn't work out this time, but 2027 is our next chance, I think. Another might be, you know, actively supporting residents in completing cost-effective home electrification projects. So a lot of towns are launching electrification programs. You know, it's hard to predict exactly what emissions impact that will have on a 5-year or 10-year timeline, but it seems like obviously necessary to get the ball rolling. And we might also distinguish between like strategies that the town can pursue, but also strategies that private individuals in town can pursue. One thing that I saw in some plans that I like is that they offer advice to residents. The resident is reading this document. What do you need to be doing in your home? If you want to be doing something, right? Like, not everybody's ready to be a first adopter or first mover on some of these things, but some people are, and that's we want to reach those people and help them be successful. Let them know how they can contribute. Next slide. And then finally, actions. The actions should be specific and time-bound steps to make progress towards the strategy. This is where we start fleshing things out. I think they should have defined roles and responsibilities, who's responsible, accountable, consulted, informed, that kind of thing. And to the extent we're able, have considerations for the resources required, the stakeholder buy-in that's needed, and any implementation obstacles. And, our chart asks for things like that. I think realistically, the first final draft of our plan will probably not have a complete set of actions for every strategy. Just acknowledging the scope of what we need to do here, we're not going to be able to get down to this level of detail for every goal that we need to have, right? So I think there's value in making sure you have a complete set of goals, roughing out the strategies that will help us move towards the goals, and then where we're able to really fleshing out specific actions. Next slide. So here's an example. Going back to that strategy of progressively increasing the green energy content of our default tier in the CEA program. An example of fleshing that out to the level of an action could be, it would need to be 25% in 2027. Because with I was looking at the green energy portfolio standards that Good Energy gave us, the state will actually be at 75% green energy by some definitions of green energy in 2027. If we added 25% on top of that, we'd be at 100%, which would meet that goal of 100%. I don't know if it actually meets it, if you dig into the definitions, but it's my best attempt. Roles and responsibilities, Good Energy LLC is our partner for implementing these things. The select board is actually accountable for approving this. But Milton utility ratepayers need to be both consulted and informed. That was the reason that the select board wasn't comfortable taking action on that at the last minute, because it does impact people's utility bills, and sneaking it in at the last second was not something people felt comfortable with. And so implementation considerations would be, hey, if that's something we want to do in 2027, we need to be doing public outreach on this in 2026 to have a good chance of success. All right. Are there more slides after that?
That's it.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to offer. Open to feedback and discussion, and then I'd love to hear where people are at with setting up working groups.
I have not made much. I need to do back in March.
Yeah, so I have this meeting coming up in June to review a proposed draft of a proposal for the conservation lands component of climate action plan. And the proposal I've circulated, I think you all have had a chance to look at it. I've gotten some really good feedback and comments from Arthur in particular. I incorporated the new draft. And I've spoken to, since conservation land is a multi-stakeholder issue, I've spoken to a variety of stakeholders, including Friends of Blue Hills, Conservation Commission, the Shade Tree Advisory Group, the Ponset River folks, and the DCR. And I've shared copies of the draft with them and invited them all to come to this meeting on June 12th to try to see where we go from here.
Do you think this sort of framing of goals, strategies, and actions would be helpful for that?
Yeah, I don't know whether I'll do that far by this June 12th meeting, but that would be the format
I think you could actually try to define some goals in that sense. At that meeting.
Yeah, it's actually in,
Yeah.
there are goals embedded in the draft proposal.
Mhm.
Yeah, and actually there's everything in there except for quantifiable numbers, which are gonna be hard for conservation land because I don't think there's much in the way of baseline, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, and part of the study you're proposing would help you set a baseline.
That's right.
And, but I do think the, like, the Massachusetts decarbonization, the roadmap analysis, one of the documents that's linked in there, has a goal defined for natural lands,
Oh, good.
carbon sequestration potential,
Okay.
things like that.
And
Yeah,
everybody here is invited to the June 12th meeting and special invite to Maggie. Yeah, but I don't know, there's some rule that there can't be a bunch of us.
we can't have a quorum at it, so it has to be
Oh, okay.
3 or fewer.
Oh, okay. Oh, Arthur is coming, but I don't know whether can he double dip because he's coming. You know, rolls
So
out.
if you, Arthur, and Maggie are present, then the rest of us probably shouldn't come.
Oh, okay.
You
Can
can,
Jack come?
you can post
Yeah,
it,
I can go.
you can post it as a meeting. And then everyone can attend.
Yeah, we could post it as an official, meeting, but I'm not sure if that's the goal.
I mean, I guess I learned at town meeting that we're actually not required to record these. Like, there's no reason not to record it, but it's just that then somebody's got to write minutes for the whole. Intense.
And then that's. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Well, okay, we have options there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can attend. And I think, yeah, because I think some folks were looking to, potentially join online, so,
Yeah.
yeah, I could run that.
You can do that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I'll let them know.
So I'm with Lisa, I have not made progress on this yet, although
You did make a lot of progress.
I did meet a lot of, people in the building industry working on the specialized code, and I hope to build on those new relationships and maybe get some folks to, engage with this, so. I'll try to do my homework for the next meeting as well. Arthur?
We, by we, I mean Jack and I, met with Waste Management Corporation in Avon, and in fact, we went out, to work with them on the day that they conducted the audit of the recyclables from the town of Milton. And, there are several outcomes, from that very valuable experience, one of which is the opportunity to improve communications to the community with Waste Management Corporation, having templates, et cetera, that we could incorporate into our work here in Milton. There was a decrease in the quality of the recyclables that Milton has processed there in comparison to the last audit that was conducted. The last audit.
Sorry, decrease in contamination.
Contamination was,
Increase in quality.
And yeah, right.
right,
That's good to hear.
a decrease in quality, increase in contamination.
No, I think it was,
We went from 10% contamination to about 13% contamination.
I think that the baseline is 10, and if you go over by a certain amount, it's considered 10. I think
They keep you sort of in a safety zone.
Yeah,
You don't get to
exactly.
15.
Yeah,
If I
it's
remember correctly.
a little complicated, but there, I do recall there was less contamination by weight, than the previous one that we did.
I thought it was just the opposite. That we were better on the preceding audit than we were on the audit that you and I participated in. So let's double check that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We also had a meeting with Chase Berkeley director of the DPW. There are a couple of topics that have surfaced that can be addressed. Again, local communication and knowing on a broad-based citizen basis what can be done through the DPW yard on what dates, and also in collaboration, possibly in collaboration with other communities. For example, if Milton has a certain date for chemicals to be turned into DPW, but people can't make that, then maybe we collaborate with Canton and other neighboring communities so that they piggyback on us and we piggyback on them, rather than each of the communities working in isolation of one another. Another item that surfaced and is resurfaced in some recent conversations is the use of stormwater drains in some instances for the discarding of certain chemicals. Most notable would be end of season surplus gasoline from lawnmower engines as they're drying them out instead of burning them off, which they don't necessarily want to do because neighbors get after them. They will sometimes wind up going into stormwater drains. Same with oil, household chemicals going into stormwater drains. So that's another area that we can be exploring in
Do you think
waste
it's really
management.
ignorance driving that behavior or just not caring?
People have raised, and again, this is anecdotal, but they are from conversations with people. Things such as logistics of getting into the DPW yard,
Okay.
but more getting out of it once they're in there. That makes it awkward. There was the suggestion offered by one person in the community that maybe we could have repositories for certain waste at our local fire stations.
Yeah.
So that people could take them there at a time that is convenient or necessity. When somebody's moving, for example.
Yeah.
Relocating from Milton to wherever they're going, taking the materials from the house that they're leaving and bringing them to a repository that might be at one of the fire stations.
Yeah, there's certainly major inconvenience factors and people have a range of tolerance.
Right, and they have to be educated. Look, if you are in the process of moving, this is what you can do. We can help with that process by working with the various real estate agents in the community. So they have an information sheet that they can pass on to the home sellers. So there's a whole series of possibilities. We just have to document them and then sit down and figure out how to collaboratively address them.
Did you have a group identified that's actually interested in helping with writing or?
Not yet.
And I mean, one option is to plan like some sort of all-day event where a great deal of writing will occur, or like could be regular sessions. I mean, I think we could organize these in a variety of ways. The goal is ultimately to draft a section of the plan with broad input from people who have some expertise.
Yeah, one person recently told me, for example, that when they have excess chemicals or gasoline, that you have to get in their backyard. Discharge it in the ground and tear it in.
Yeah.
So he talked about where that goes. Groundwater. So,
How can we correct people's stupidity? That's just stupid.
Should get them on electric lawn equipment.
I don't understand.
No gasoline to deal with. That's one of my favorite things about my battery.
I don't
Battery reload.
ever support that. But I just like I I sell only organics, and I would love to have like a townwide ban on chemicals. Chemical lawn and products and disease, herbicides and fungicides. But that's really difficult to do. And so people have to just assume some responsibility. Like when you go to move, it takes planning. I moved 4 years ago, and what's in your basement, and when you're moving. Like, how can we control that? Like, I don't want to put more work on our staff. Our firemen are already under represented by, like, they only have 11 firemen on any shift, and they're supposed to have 17. I would feel very badly putting this responsibility on our firemen.
Well, that wasn't the recommendation. The recommendation was to have a repository at the fire stations for the people who can't, for one reason or another, get to the DPW yard on the DPW schedule. The DPW would then collect from the depository at the fire station. It would not be a responsibility of the fire personnel at all.
Another example, the health department does have containers for mercury items containing mercury that you can drop off there at any point. That's 24/7.
There are probably opportunities in the realm of people who do care and are trying, but, for one reason or another, haven't connected with the services and programs that are available. I mean, usually when I miss recycling or toxic chemicals day, then the stuff just sits in my basement or garage for another month or year. But I mean, since I'm not moving, it can do that. Or, I guess you can pay one of these waste removal companies to come and do it if you have the money, right? But there's sort of I'm sure that it's going to be really hard to deal with the people who just don't care and are pouring gasoline like in their backyard. But there's probably a middle ground there of people who would do something better with a little help or education.
Well, it also addresses communication, education, which is cited, but also setting the schedule and the processes in such a way that they're convenient to the people rather than to what we may have had as a structure 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It would suggest that that's not working for numbers of people today.
Yeah.
And I know with certain like automotive liquid leftover, I know like AutoZone and Bob's, they'll take it, so like I think with antifreeze, I think I've brought some of my stuff there. So I don't know, I just think that's all sort of being part of an adult.
John, did you have anything you wanted to share?
I've been in Holland and Belgium the last couple of weeks, and I must say that it was amazing how effectively Holland, with its long history of windmills, and how they've come into the current time and have expanded the number of windmills that they have operating, and what they're doing with those windmills in terms of not only generating electricity, but moving water, moving all sorts of things that require energy. And as you look at the few windmills that we have around here, they're mostly never turning. And you go through Holland and just in all parts of the country, you see hundreds of windmills constantly turning, and realizing how much energy that is being developed by this process is just mind-boggling. I found it as as a direction where we could go. I mean, we don't have the geography the same that would allow us to do it, but looking at what they're doing is very impressive. And how much of their energy, total energy, comes from wind. This is just mind-boggling.
They also have a great biking culture, biking, bicycles.
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
That there are, I think the number that's quoted is there are 3 bicycles for every person. And it's just amazing to see how many people are going on bicycles. So, no, I haven't really done anything for them, being traveling for them most of the time.
I've got a lot of nice tours this time of year. And all, right?
Right. Well, with that, let's move on to topic number 6. Ron, this is yours, with discussion of the climate action planning committee logo.
Yeah. So I volunteered for this, for which I got a lot of grief from my wife, who's an ex-graphic designer. So I asked her, I think at the last meeting I said that it'd be great if we had our own logo, and that the logo that the Apex group came up with it is good for cover for the actual climate action plan, but that we needed something more simple and sweet for. So I asked my wife, and she did a refresher course on graphic design and worked with another person that works on a climate scorecard project. And this is what we came up with. This is shrinkable or expandable on your computer. So this is not necessarily the size of it. It can be made very small. So it just appears, on the corner of a letterhead or a document. Yeah.
Bring up the Apex logo of it.
Yeah, oh, Jack had a comment about that. And he wanted to, suggested that we use the sun from their logo to be consistent. And just my personal opinion, I kind of think their sun's a little clunky.
I do, yeah, I like the sun as well. They have a whole slew of icons, but they don't really have like this repeatable logo that has that says Milton climate action planning. They do have a color palette as well that they provided us. I can pull that up in a second. So I think, if you guys decide to make more materials like this, and you want to stick to, what the plan looks like, you can use the color palettes as well.
I hear the need for the kind of simple self-contained logo that you can use as like a fab icon on web tabs or part of a letterhead, and the logo they gave us is very, very there's a lot going on, so when you shrink it down really small, it's not clear what's going on. I am concerned that this is stylistically totally different from what we have from them.
My understanding is, well, maybe I'm wrong with this, is that what they gave us was intended more as a cover for our actual plan document, and that it was never intended to be used as a kind of multi-purpose logo.
Yeah, I think they wanted to give us some design elements to embed in
Oh, I see.
documents that we,
Uh-huh.
that we, uh, produce for the communities. There's some stylistic connection.
Yeah,
We hand out a flyer for people visit the committee's page, and when they look at the document, there's some, subconsciously important because when you go from one document or touch point to the next, you're like, I'm dealing with the same entity.
yeah, well, yeah, if they wanted. My understanding was that it wasn't intended to be used in that way, which is why I came up with the suggestion that I did, but, if people, shrink that down to, so I don't know whether it would appear, whether it would be.
No, I think I agree with that. Oh,
So here's the sum that they gave.
but that's not even in the logo.
No, it's not. These are a little bit different than what's in the logo. But they do.
So I wonder, if we adjusted this sun design to use their color palette, if it would integrate well. I'm curious, what are these three little green dashes in there?
No, those are just designer things. Yeah. We could get rid of some.
It'd be good to have these in like the vector formats that can be edited and stuff.
Yeah, well, they are available in editing.
I'm not wrong, they may be sunspots.
It's one thing we can safely exclude. It's controlling sunscopes, although, if you wanna freak out about something, massive, solar storms can take out the grid, so it's always fun.
So this is a PowerPoint template that they gave us, so for any presentations. And I'm sure we could add this to it as well, but.
Yeah, the other thing that,
We should align with their fonts as well, as another place we can.
the other thing that just irks me a little bit about this one is that there's the title of who we are is not really fully represented. It's just the climate action plan.
Right.
So it's,
So.
Because we don't have this in an editable format, we're kind of stuck with it.
So this slide is the community slide. There's, let's see, this is the government and community section. This slide is for solid waste. Let's see, buildings are energy and buildings here.
I do like
Yeah,
this trope of, using the pieces of the larger logo to,
yeah, well, if you send me, so can you send me those, or maybe I have them, but.
Yeah, so these are all on, let me stop the share here. These are all on the SharePoint.
I'm not registered, for some reason I have problems getting in SharePoint stuff.
for what it's worth, I applied for nonprofit access to Microsoft Office tools for Sustainable Milton. And just got tired of not being able to interact with these files properly. And so if folks don't have Office and would like access to it, I think I could probably make that happen through Sustainable Milton.
Okay, that's the only way they're not. You can't just send me a file.
So
Well, do you have?
the way that it, it should, anyone who, receives the folder should be able to have access and edit it.
But you need PowerPoint on your computer to open,
Yeah, right.
and like Google Slides opens PowerPoint documents, but it doesn't open like
Right.
templates or,
Yeah,
fancy ones, so. Like the reason I went and signed up for it was because I couldn't open the pathways analysis Excel workbook. Until I got actual Excel.
yeah, so this is the main page of the folder, the SharePoint, and it's right here, design and resources. And they have, all the logos in here.
So it's a PowerPoint template.
So that's what I just pulled down.
And is this all on the town's website under our committee? So anybody can look at it?
No, not at the moment. These are just the raw resources that we'd be able to put something together to possibly then put on the website.
Well, I mean, I don't know, so maybe I have to go negotiate this with my graphic designer. Maybe we could use one of the frames, maybe not the whole thing, to have a logo that says Milton Climate Action Planning Committee. It would be consistent with the full-scale thing that Apex did. And my only concern, other than the negotiation concern, is my own technology ability to download this. So I can try to use SharePoint. I've never been able, had some success. I could try Alex's approach, but any help you could give me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, me too.
If you're a graphic designer and can articulate what she means.
Well, I just think, yeah, the little mini slides that you just showed, the buildings, we can just pick one of those
Mhm.
and try to craft a Milton Climate Action Planning Committee logo around that, the same way that this looks. That would have some consistency of flavor and color and font possibly. Yeah.
Okay, so we can maybe follow up on this offline.
Yeah.
And thank you thank you
So
to
you have to
your,
thank for.
I was gonna say, thank you to your graphic designer as well for getting the ball rolling. Great. Okay, so the next topic is to discuss the semi-annual progress report to the select board. So actually, surprise, surprise, folks, we've been at this for a year. And we according to our charge, are supposed to report back to the select board semi-annually and twice a year. We last reported to them in December. And June is the clear next time. The report will contain the following information. I'm reading from the chart here. The annual updated community-wide greenhouse gas emissions inventory showing progress towards the above-mentioned greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals. Subject to data availability, so we're committed to that. Implementation steps accomplished within the past year. Anticipated steps to be accomplished within the next 2 years. Resources, including funding necessary to meet its charge. So I think with where we are, it should be a real emphasis on item 4. But making, beginning to really flesh out some resource asks. And maybe we can take a few minutes of our discussion to just brainstorm we might want to say there. We've had some preliminary discussions about the need for sustainability staff in town to drive this forward. Knowing that there will be a much larger process leading into a potential override next year. I think it's important that we figure out how to engage with that so that if there are opportunities to better resource the work of this committee and implementation of the plan, that we don't miss out on those, because I think that the override process will be both uniquely painful, but also a unique opportunity to, while we're biting some bullets, can we think holistically about it?
I think you really want to talk about the amount of time and effort the committee members have put in to engage with stakeholders. Seems to be the main thing we've been doing this past year. And so I think you really have to emphasize that, because I think that's been a major accomplishment.
Could I ask all of you to send me, a brief summary of your activities?
Yeah.
And I will make sure to include that. And I think the anticipated steps to be completed will mostly focus on our plan for completing the plan. So, I can bring a draft list to review and agree to at the next meeting. It's gonna have to. I'll raise my hand through that.
Could we ask for a dedicated staff person?
I think we should, yeah. And that's just gonna be the beginning of a conversation about, well, where in the world will the money come for that? But if you don't ask, then you can't have that conversation.
And that was part of our very early on conversations about the committee
Right.
and what such committees need relative to other communities, and we could say some other communities and what they've done.
And certainly the outside funding possibilities to get temporary staff. And I've been in touch with a nonprofit called Mass Energize. Work with it. They were actually the organization I connected with that inspired me to join Sustainable Milton, because they have a focus on driving climate action at the community level and really emphasize the importance of community and building communities of action. But they've been, in the last year, they have done a multi-town electrification program, sort of piloting an approach to sharing staff amongst several towns in Metro West, like Wayland, Concord, that kind of area. But they've come up with a model for doing, with staff that's shared across multiple towns in a region, getting some stuff done. So I'm really, really interested to learn more from them about that. And they're interested in rolling out that model elsewhere. So basically the first thing people always ask me when I say, hey, could we get a, sustainability staffer for the town? The next question is, could we share that with neighboring towns? And I've never known how to answer that question, but the answer certainly isn't no. But anyway, I don't think we're going to be able to lay out a solution in a progress report, but I do think we need to keep repeating that there's a need there, that there's only so much that we can do in volunteer hours.
I mean, I think about some of the renewable energy measures that we use in town. So, like, if we're, electrifying or, I don't know, energy efficiency measures, the money we would spend could be used to fund a sustainability staff person. Unless, those budgets already account for that. Like the electric bill for the schools might be lower because they have solar panels
Yeah,
and,
so it'd be a request for partnership on the financing and how do you come up with the money for?
I kind of like the idea of something sustainable that's happening in the town. The cost savings being used to fund the position.
An additional option for consideration might be something like what the Conservation Commission has, in that it has a conservation agent, part-time, so many hours a year. And not unlike what exists in a lot of other communities. But other communities have somebody on a full-time basis, so this may be something that we grow step A, step B, step C, until such time as community might have what it needs, if it's determined that it needs a full-time person on this.
Yeah, there's definitely a danger, if you make something part-time and small, then you attract people who want something part-time and small. Okay. And then it's hard to say, well, goodbye person, now we need more of like a director type position.
So I have a question, not to put Jack on the spot, but isn't Jack our dedicated staff person?
Yes. But this is, not part of my job description.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we don't want to lose Jack, but I think there's more work here than Jack can do.
yes. My primary roles are stormwater management and waste management. So this is not, my particular area of expertise. And even Josh's role, he sort of carved out, his own role just because he was passionate about these issues.
So we have less support informal than we started with.
Right.
The project, yeah.
But we will be getting a new assistant town planner. So I don't know if that person will be able to take on some of Josh's responsibilities.
Yeah, so we can.
Yes, for sure. But I think the point I was trying to make was that role isn't a sustainability focused role. Josh was just able to do, his planning and development and had it focused towards sustainability. But that's not necessarily a given with that position.
But if we sort of frame the request in terms of, there's a need for more staff support with appropriate expertise. Let's be creative about how we get from here to there. It could be writing it into job descriptions.
Yeah.
Changing roles. And when I did have an initial conversation with Nick Milano about this a few months ago. And those were the kinds of things that he was just, brainstorming that, like, much easier than opening a rec for a brand new sort of leadership level position, which would be ideal. Can you add it to the job description of the existing? That's certainly better than nothing.
Yeah. And it's part of our charge is to review, the bylaws and the procedures. So I think it would make sense. We would recommend to the select board to, make any relevant positions have a piece that relates to what our charge is.
That could be part of the plan, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would say too, for the engineering department, potentially having something in that job description that does relate to sustainability, so that, you know, the next person that might have that position would have that background and be able to use it.
Right.
Which Marina does. But I will say too, that we are getting, we're getting 2 interns in the engineering, office. One of them is a civil engineer and the other is going to be, sustainable, oriented. So that will be great.
When is that, this summer?
Yeah, this summer.
So
I
you-
think they're gonna be in, I'm not quite sure the specific role that they'll have. I think the role is gonna be shared between planning and engineering.
So are there any other resource requests? I think in the long run, to just meet the requests in the charge, like an updated greenhouse gas inventory would require ongoing consulting support that's currently unfunded. So I would plan to write that as, no update to the greenhouse gas inventory. Because it's not available, and if you want to receive that, then we need to find a way to fund having that updated on an annual basis.
Right.
Um,
I know the state has, a huge campaign about Massachusetts being the leader in the world for climate action. But I don't know if Milton's going to be considered for, funding from the state. So that's something to consider.
It's certainly part of our job to go looking for funding sources.
Mhm.
But I think we could use help from the select board because they're orchestrating and ultimately synthesizing the town's budget and bringing it to town meeting. Ask for their help.
Did the town have a grant writer? Like a dedicated grant writer or?
I'm not sure about the past.
I wonder if we could ask for volunteers.
So traditionally, I think the grant writing has been done by people in my position as well as Josh's position, related to sustainability. There are other grants that, like the engineers will prepare grants for work that they need to do.
So
For DPW, I would usually do them, or my position would do them.
So do you guys have a good understanding then of everything that's out there? Like it wouldn't necessarily be helpful to have someone else identify.
Right. Unfortunately, I don't have a great idea of everything that's out there. Josh definitely had a better idea of that.
This is the kind of thing a sustainability staffer could
Yeah.
do, and towns that have them, that have had them for, 4 or 5 years at this point, when they made the case for them, was, people in these roles with this expertise can bring in more money and grant funding than it costs.
Right.
It's true that our competitiveness, the competitive landscape, for these kinds of grants has shifted in recent years, both our position in it and just the level of competition generally, but also the amount of money being directed towards it is increasing. So
I think in addition to asking for, a full employee, we should also ask for paid interns dedicated to what our work is. So we might get that. Because then they don't have benefits and all of that.
So I think traditionally, usually it's the department heads who go for the grants. Like I know with the consolidated facilities, they've been really great at getting in the past for all their initiatives. So I thought, and I know Tim in the planning department is really good at getting all sorts of grants, so I think that falls on the department heads. And I think there are a lot of, you know, colleges who are looking for, co-ops and interns, for credit. So I think we should reach out to, a lot of schools, to see if they have any availability, or interested students. And I'm also wondering, how often are we supposed to have an updated greenhouse gas, report? What's the usual? Is it every 5 years or every 10 years?
Well, the charge asks for an annual update, but I'm sure that's negotiable. You know, I used to work in carbon accounting, software development, and the companies would try to, who were doing it were expected to do it annually, but it's actually kind of difficult to measure progress the way these data sources work sometimes. So
Yeah,
The
'cause
software,
I feel like a year goes by so quickly and it takes so long to implement, a new strategy or a new goal. So, that's why I was kind of wondering, is it every year or what is traditionally when was?
that doesn't feel like the top priority to me to get it updated for 2023 is. What were you saying?
I just wanted to stay with the position for a moment, because this is of great importance. You're right, the committee cannot be serving as a substitute without the type of support that it and the town needs. So it'll be very important is making a recommendation to the select board with the reasons why. And this will take a process because we have a personnel board. We have the possibility of tying this into a potential override that the town could be entertaining for next year and so on down the line, and say to them, here are some alternatives, approaches that you can consider. But at this point in time is the minimum that we need. By 5 years from now, or 3 years from now, this is what the town is going to need. I think
Yeah.
we have to be specific and concrete to help them make what would be a favorable decision in the interest of the community.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just practically difficult. So I think usually the order of operations is a climate action plan is written, and then you look at what's in it and you go, oh, that's a lot, and you hire somebody to against that scope of work. So given that we don't have a plan done and approved, just makes it a little more awkward to be specific, this is the scope available for the role. I just think that if we have to continue bringing up the topic, otherwise you're starting from zero.
Yeah.
Much later on.
It is going to become more complex rather than less complex.
Yeah.
And if we don't get the resource chain put into place early on, it'll be not productive.
So just as a follow-up, if folks could individually send me just a short, doesn't have to be long, but write up of your activities over the last 6 months. Don't spend too long on it, so plenty to do.
And like that within a week.
Sure, that'd be great, and I'll prepare a draft for our next meeting. Marvelous. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're already over, but some of these are shorter. We could also choose to table some of these if people prefer. Just quick overview of what's left. Discussion of recruiting and selection process for our youth member. I think it'd be great to get moving on that. Discussion of opportunities for signage on stormwater drains. I feel like that kind of came up earlier, but maybe you have a little more to say on that.
Yeah, we could defer that to a future agenda.
Okay.
And we have some examples of designs. Do you get those, Jack?
Yeah, I didn't hear back from, the Mystic.
Okay.
Or the Arlington
And,
engineering staff.
we've been in communication with the concert.
Yeah, we spoke to them and they have,
They have
examples.
materials and
Yeah, yeah.
supplies.
One they can,
So this could be a discussion at a future meeting.
Okay. Then the report on the outcome of the town meeting vote on the specialized code, I can be very brief about that. And, finally, discussion of adapting the youth survey to all Milton residents, if we want to have it tonight.
Actually, I thought about that
Mhm.
and have a, suggestion, which is that we don't adapt the youth survey, but we rather create a survey that relates to the technical working groups. And each technical working group would be asked to come up with a series of questions related to people's attitudes, knowledge, et cetera, about the working group agenda. And that way, we could
Mhm.
kill two birds with one stone. Yeah,
So let's come back to that. Let's come back to the order that I'd like to put in here. So should we spend a few moments talking about next step for recruiting and selection for our youth members? We definitely.
Right,
If we don't get the ball rolling on that, then just.
yeah,
Yeah, another one. So I have not yet sent your letter out to teachers, but I feel like that was a next step.
Okay.
the school's winding down.
Yeah, so I mean, probably they won't.
Yeah, nothing may happen until, the fall, so maybe.
It's
it might
possible
be,
if I get my act together and send out some messages before the last day of school, that I know.
Then we could have somebody over the summer.
And then we could. Yeah, so and beyond that. What's next? If, you know, if teachers sort of give us a list of names, are we asking, we inviting the students to apply? And if so, like, what's in the application form? These are the kinds of things that. How do we
It
decide?
feels, I mean, it's one thing to discuss adults joining our committee. It's very much another to discuss in a public meeting,
Mhm.
students who have applied to our program and which one we might select. I feel very funny about that. More funny than I felt discussing the adults.
That was funny too.
That felt funny too, but I don't know if we draw one out of a hat or, you know, like, if we can just vote, like we each submit a vote without a discussion of it. I don't know, but I don't think it can be the same kind of discussion we had of like, well, what's the merits of this young person over that person?
I think I remember, you guys discussing possibly having a couple members do interviews.
Say that again?
I recall, someone had mentioned having a couple members here, go through and do that process. As opposed to the entire committee, but
So it could be a subcommittee,
yeah, I think that's, someone had
so
mentioned
we have a
that. Yeah.
selection subcommittee, and
Yeah,
that wouldn't be a public meeting.
put two people together from this committee to do that and make recommendations to the committee as a whole.
I'm comfortable with that.
I can, put together an application, that, students could fill out. That would, allow us to get some insight into the student and what they're thinking about, and, I could probably turn that around within next week and send it to you so that you could, send it along with your letters.
Because I think for it to be a good experience for a student, we need to articulate how it ties into their you know, they've got a community service requirement, so it should
Yeah,
certainly help them satisfy that. But like, what would they ideally do? To advance the work of the committee,
well,
in partnership. with
I think it would
schools.
also be important to know what their long-term plans and goals are, what they see themselves, having interest in.
Yeah.
So yeah, based on working with the students, I think I could put together a reasonable application, with just, maybe 5 questions or something like that, that would give them a chance to respond to, and then we can look that over and either, come to a conclusion on one or decide we want to interview a couple of them with a subcommittee.
And maybe
Yeah,
there's someone who's trying to become an Eagle Scout and, you know, they always have to do a project. A lot of it is planting or, creating a garden. So reaching out to the Eagle Scouts might be good.
well, I guess that speaks to where is the expectation that they help move along the plan or the public engagement activities of the committee, or just focus in on one action item in the plan and kind of drive that, which certainly if you're, when this committee is further along in its work, it probably more what it work will look like. But,
So they wouldn't be like a full voting member of the committee.
I think they are,
Yeah,
yeah.
That's what was approved by the select board.
nice.
And so what we're discussing is setting expectations,
Right.
because we need to have clear expectations in our own minds before we,
So,
unless we're gonna, you know, draw lots, which is maybe an option, but.
Ron's raising a very important
Yeah.
point, so we have to tell them we're gonna be full voting members of the committee in advance.
So, but they're gonna sit in on all these exciting conversations and understand the issues. I mean, I don't know.
They won't bring necessarily what you're talking about to the committees, but as they grow, we wanted to have them as rising juniors
Yeah,
in high school,
yeah.
so that as they grow and develop, they'll be
Yeah.
bringing more
Well, I think
contributions.
there should be a desire to learn a great deal about at least one area of our movements.
And should they,
We could ask them.
I think, right, like explaining what the commitment is, so, you know, there's the meetings. We might have to stick to a hard stop though, because they'll have homework. And you know, yeah, what the ask is.
and maybe they should be at least juniors, so that they'll be with us for more than just a year, right?
That was one that John had made previously. So I think we're gonna express that in our outreach.
I think helping with the outreach plan would be a big part of it, especially with young people.
Yeah, and I think we should realize that it is a bit, we should express that it is a bit open-ended. This one thing, a creative process, a chance to tackle something difficult with grown-ups who are also not 100% sure what to do. A preview of life after school.
We're gonna fall off our pedestals.
Related question, did we get any feedback yet on the recommendation from the chamber for the position that's open?
I have not sent that over.
Okay,
I was scrambling this week. I got a draft of the letter written,
just curious.
and,
On the
send it to
agenda.
Maggie for feedback, and my next step, probably tomorrow, I'll send that to me. And I have sent our recommendations to the select board, but I did that last week. So I guess we're lucky they'll take it up at the next meeting. I should probably check their agendas. Sure, yeah, exactly. Any other, thoughts on this topic? So then, I'll give a brief report on the outcome of the town meeting vote. So, one of the reasons I'm behind on my homework is because I put a ton of energy into, preparing for town meeting, and it took me by surprise that I was there for three nights. Live and learn. But really, not boring at all, and I guess people have been doing it for a long time. You can see how it might start to drag, but it was really exciting for me to realize I was like participating in a democratic activity that's older than the United States. It's a venerable tradition. With a lot of help from town meeting members, so I put a lot of energy into, trying to reach out to town meeting members leading up to the meeting, get research materials that Sustainable Milton had worked on into their hands so that they weren't encountering the topic for the very first time, at town meeting that night. I do think that for a lot of people that was still the case, but, worked hard to get ahead of that as much as possible. There's no easy way to reach out to all town meeting members digitally, I learned. The only thing that's public is their mailing addresses. And because a lot of the materials I wanted to share were digital, I decided not to do that. But I think ultimately, was able to reach out to dozens of town meeting members and got sort of active support from about half a dozen. And it turns out that they don't want every single town meeting member to speak in support or against articles anyway, so it was about right. And ultimately, the article was passed 160 to 51, so it was very solid support in the end. And I did, though the warrant committee did recommend against passage, I did appreciate their diligence and their feedback, because it helped. They highlighted some issues that I did need to go learn more about and prepare for, and so that was very helpful. That's my report back out on that exciting experience.
When does it go into effect?
January 2025. So new buildings completed after that date.
And do we know what the changes are for coming July 1st? That was one of my concerns.
So those are associated with the current stretch code,
Yep.
which is updating, and you're just curious what those changes are.
Are they?
Yeah, so the overall, the whole building PERS rating, the ATRS home efficiency rating system requirement is tightening from, I think it's like 52 to 42. So don't quote me on the exact numbers, but it's sort of a significant tightening of the home energy efficiency rating. And that applies to new buildings, but it also applies to significant additions and renovations. So those over 1,000 square feet or more than, I think, 50% of the existing square footage. And, so there were definitely concerns about that, but they were not affected by the vote because it's part of the stretch code, which we're already on.
Okay. Thanks.
But the building department can definitely give you more detail on that, as can our newly elected select board member, John Cohane, because he is a certified first rater by profession. So he knows all about it. He was actually one of the first people I reached out to when I started learning about it, because I knew he was a Hearst rater before I knew he was a select board candidate. Yeah. We know folks are getting tired, so should we just come back to the survey topic and you kick us off? I do like the idea of maybe making it a question for the working groups.
Yeah, I think that would be more consistent with overall work. We get it done.
I mean, I think one of the values that we sort of found from the youth survey was, you know, obviously designing a survey to collect statistically valid data that you can draw inferences from is like very hard. And it probably requires more energy and sort of hounding people for responses and designing a sample than we have the expertise or resources to do. But there's value just in creating a touch point and engaging people and giving them a reason to sit down and think about the topic for 20 minutes or reach out to us.
I took a course in survey design once upon a time. So I have a little understanding of how to write good, questions in such a way that you get information that's useful, right? There's lots of ways to ask for input. You could make it open-ended, you could make it a scale, or, the yes, no, and you want it to be easy to synthesize. You know that you're a data scientist, but you have to kind of pretend like you have the data. And so that would drive what the question would look like. You can imagine looking at a spreadsheet with all these answers, it's a bunch of just short paragraphs or short phrases. That's really hard to put together if it's just that. So I'm happy to help other people with coming up with survey questions.
One thing that I would ideally like to know more about is gauging people's attitudes about climate change. I mean, I'd like to know more about what people already know and attitudes. It's one thing to say, I think something should be done. Right?
Yeah.
Generally by other people versus I think I would be willing to do something, but
right.
This much or this much, so kind of teasing apart where people are at in terms of readiness for action. And then within that, I think it'll be really important to focus engagement on people who are interested in being at the leading edge of the curve. Because there's a change curve here. I mean, most people are not going to do a complete home electrification project until it's cheaper and they know a dozen other people who've also done it.
Right.
Because we just, when we become homeowners, we have to learn from our friends and neighbors how to manage a building.
Just a quick example of how do you get to that? You could ask the question, rate how much you know, but then you could ask that, but you could also ask, click how many of these, checkbox, a list of things. How many things have you implemented in the last year? And that would show that they know, because they actually already took action. And then maybe a similar question of what do you have planned in the next year to do?
Maybe also, if I may, what their greatest concern is.
Mm,
And that may vary depending upon where they live
mm,
in the community.
mm.
I think also how open they are to changing their routines.
Right.
Because that, to me, that's the kernel of a lot of this.
Yeah, I mean, there are behavioral issues that survey can identify, but there are also kind of conceptual issues. And how much do people know, understand, value, et cetera? Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, there are multiple ways, multiple tools. Multiple ways we could use a survey as a tool, to make progress.
yes.
Maybe there's an educational goal where,
Right.
and then there are trade-offs, and, you know, shorter targeted surveys might be easier to get responses to, but then you need more of them.
Right.
So definitely something to think about, and that's why I like your suggestion
Yeah.
of making it more of a study topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Should we mention our meeting with Elaine?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So Alex, myself, and forget her name, teacher, Kiara, the student that designed the youth survey, met with Elaine, the Milton Times reporter. And we ended up, most of the meeting was interviewing Kiara, the student, and her experience, and what was in the survey. And I believe in an article, a Milton Times article, it's going to come out about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a ton of value in just in keeping the topic in the newspaper.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, there's big cultural changes here where you kind of need to hear about something a lot before it feels normal. So. Any other comments? Final topic is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Well, with that, then I'll entertain motions to adjourn.
So I'll second one.
All right, all in favor?
I,
I'll pretend there's a roll public there. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with me.
Yeah. Thank you for the.
Thanks, Maggie.
Good night.
Very loud.